Hi, this is Joseph with Deepwater Exploration. Today we're going to be showing you how to connect our cameras to your current existing ROV/AUV systems. So before we begin, I just want to explain what's inside the box with each camera. First, you'll find the camera itself with a little case that wraps around the camera. You'll also find the metal brackets, and you'll find screws that are included to use with the metal brackets. And depending on the connector type that you're using, in this example we'll be focusing on the JST connector, you'll find either a housing or we also include a direct USB contact. So what's the first step in connecting our cameras? Well, the first thing you want to make sure is that the cable is stripped to your desired length. So although the cables come pre-stripped, you may have electronic enclosure where you need a longer strip cable. So in order to strip the cables with a JST type connection, you want to use a jacket stripper like this. Now this tool slits the cables to the side and you're able to then cut it off. Now you want to make sure that when you cut off the cables, you want to make sure that the edge is very clean and that you don't have any side slits in order for it to work with wet link. With epoxy, it's less important that that's the case, but it's still good practice to keep it relatively clean. So you want to go ahead and do that. Now after that you have it cleaned, now it's ready for you to install it onto a wet link penetrator. Now to do that, our recommendation is to start off by taking the power and ground cables, putting it on its side, and taking the camera like this and twisting the two data pairs, which are the white and yellow cables. Now after that it's been twisted, you want to then put it in the penetrator itself, and this should be a pretty simple task. And after it's in, you want to then take your power cable and put that one in. So put the red one in. And because we're doing it one at a time like this, it should be relatively easy, and pull it together. And now you want to go ahead and push this down like this, and we're going to go ahead and put in our ground cable. And this one may be a little bit of challenging, but a little bit of wiggle, it should go right in. Like this. That's perfect. And now you can go ahead and tighten this penetrator the way you like. Now, in order for this penetrator to work, you need to install this into a 10mm hole. So this will be your electronic enclosure. For the purposes of this setup, we will not be showing that, but that should be relatively simple to do. 10mm hole is much larger than the hole that's included in the penetrator itself. So now that you have the cable penetrator set up and it's inside your electronic enclosure, you want to take the contact, the housing contact of the JST connector, and now you want to put each of these pins directly inside. And the way that these work is they have the little plastic tabs that sort of lock into place. So you want to place the tabs into the metal that locks in from the JST connection. And you want to make sure the polarity is correct. So power goes first here, next followed by data, followed by the white cable, and then the yellow cable, and then lastly the ground cable. Just like that. Now if you made a mistake, these cables are relatively easy to remove from the JST connector. You can use a flathead screwdriver like this one, and you can go in and pry it off while pulling the cable itself, just like that. And we're going to be putting it back in for now, but that's a method if you made a mistake or if you ever want to remove these, to remove the camera into different systems. All right, now that you have the cables into the contacts, you want to make sure you do this with all the cameras that you have. And now you're able to install it into our multiplexer board. Now these connectors are designed to have a little bit of strain relief. They're also smaller than USB, which makes it easier to install multiple cameras. And they just clip in like that, and anytime you want to remove them, you just squeeze in the cable like this. Okay, so for the multiplexer board, this is designed to attach to the back of a Raspberry Pi, or if you have a blue ROV enclosure, you can also attach it to where the tether board is if you're using the Navigator flight controller, or you can just attach this with any other single board type computer. And in this example, we're using the Raspberry Pi, and what you want to do is you want to get a 90-degree USB-C cable, and the way that the board has been designed is that the cutout is perfectly fitting so that it's a perfectly flat edge. And now with this USB-C cable, you can now attach it to your Pi. Now for the multiplexer board, you will have to provide separate power, as the USB port on the Pi itself is only capable of supporting up to 3 cameras. And to support and to provide separate power, we include these JST connectors that go into the Pi, and you just have to supply a 5-volt supply. You can use this by converting your 12 volts to 5 volts in your ROV systems, anything with 5 volts. Now in this example over here that we made, we actually connected to the Pi itself because we're using a power to Ethernet module, which is capable of supporting the power that's needed. And you can also see that the multiplexer board attaches perfectly to the back of the Raspberry Pi using 4 standoffs and 4 of the M2.5 screws. Now that it's been attached, all you need to do in our example, because this is power over Ethernet, is to connect the Ethernet cable just like that. And you can see that we're getting power over the Pi. And then we're going to be connecting all the cameras together like this. And in this example, we're using three cameras. And now that you have the hardware part set up in terms of waterproofing to your current electronic enclosure and installing it into your current existing ROV system, we're going to be showing you how to connect the camera to your actual ROV/AUV frame. So the camera itself comes with a rubber case with 2 screws that are ready for mounting. The reason that this design is to prevent galvanic corrosion, as any screw that goes into aluminum itself, despite it being anodized, can scratch the coating and cause galvanic corrosion. So the way that you want to attach these is we have these metal brackets that are included with the camera. And the mechanism itself is very simple. What you want to make sure is that the exploreHD is on top. That signifies where the top of the camera is. Of course, that is subject to change because during shipments, while modifying this could move. So we can always adjust that later. And what you want to do is to put one of the screws in first and pull on the metal bracket a little bit, just like this, and it should fit in perfectly. And now you're free to move the camera into any orientation you like. And to actually tighten the camera, we also include these M2 screws. And these screws just fit in on the side like this. So one screw on one side and another screw on the other side. And in terms of the metal bracket, you want to make sure that's attached to your ROV frame. You can use 2 M3 screws here on the bottom side for that. Okay, that's perfect. Now, anytime you want to adjust the position, you're free to untie these and adjust the angle of the cameras. Now, once the camera is in this case, you should be able to reposition it by just twisting it to the desired angle that you like. Now, if that's proving to be challenging, you can also push the case outwards a little bit. So push the camera out of its case, and that should make it easier to twist. And whenever you're ready, just push the camera back in. So that is pretty much the hardware setup of the camera itself. Next, I will move on to the actual software end, where we are going to be using DWE OS to provide a stream with these cameras.